So, hi Shawn, it's great to talk to you today. Both of us are in the business of trying to help people be at their best, to help them thrive, to be happier, more productive, more generally thrilled with their lives. Uh, I thought it would be interesting for us to talk today about whether we take our own advice, whether we walk our own talk. And I wondered if we could start perhaps by you sharing with us what was the first big change that you made in your own life to become happier, more productive, or any other thing that you think is desirable?
Yeah, I think it's so fun because, you and I have had conversations about this before and about like how, doing the work that we do, it's sometimes difficult to be able to live the principles we want to, right? I mean, with travel and with work and with clients and demands upon our time, it can be challenging to be able to do all that. I when I first got into doing this research, I fell into it backwards. Studying happiness. I was at the divinity school studying ethics, and then people in the psychology department, like Dr. Talb and Shahar and Ellen Langer, were saying you can study and quantify some of these positive changes. Come over and do it, and we started doing it. And I started going out speaking at all these companies. I went to 33 countries in 1 year. And my back literally broke. I was so lonely, and I was traveling by myself, and I'd see people for an hour, and and then I would be gone again. And I didn't have social connection, and I was on a plane back from Switzerland, and my back one of the vertebrae just disintegrated. Basically, I had to stand up the whole flight home, and I laid down on the floor basically for 6 weeks and missed a trip to Africa. And what it really taught me was I was so excited about this research, I wasn't doing it myself, right? I mean, I know that the greatest predictor of long-term happiness, I mean, this is the seminal part of my research is like the greatest predictor of long-term happiness is your social connection.
Right,
And I had
right,
none of it, right?
right.
So actually, after this period, and when I went to Latin America doing some work down there, I'd see people who were living under threats of express kidnappings and violence and all that. And some of them could still be happy if they had social connection, their family, their deep friendships. So that year, I learned from all this. I realized that the big change I needed to make was I had to live it. So I moved from Boston, where I was at Harvard, down to the same street that my sister lived in San Antonio, Texas, into a suburb with married families and with kids. And I was single, but I wanted to have that social connection. So every time I come back, I'd have her and my nieces and my brother-in-law. And from there, this community built. And then when her husband got moved to the military, I followed them to Virginia and then back to Texas. So we created this social connection. And for me, that changed everything. It went from talking about happiness to actually living it myself.
How quickly
But,
did it make a difference for you?
it made it very quickly, because I think that, what I was struggling so much for is that I think people have like pet problems that they have, not just like pet peeves, but things that are like continually they do actions and behaviors in their life trying to fill some void or gap. And for me, like I, don't worry about some things. I, don't have high anxiety, but I feel loneliness,
Right.
like I'm gone for 24 hours and I feel it,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think for me, that was one of the things I needed to solve. And for me, it was being good in solitude, which is meditation and things like that. But it was also deep social connection. It was the breadth and the depth. So it was like the deep relationships with my family, but also breadth, like these weak ties of like friends that you don't see all that much, but reconnecting to them was so important.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm talking. I want to hear from you, because I think that you know I want to. I feel like you've dealt with some of these challenges yourself. Like what's the biggest change you've made? I mean, you've had so many like changes and life transitions. So what's it been for you?
Well, I was doing behavioral change work at McKinsey, the consulting firm, and about 3 years into my career there, I had a similar kind of crash, if you like, which was a bit of an eye opener, which was I got sick. I mean, I was traveling a lot,
Yeah.
and my father was ill in a hospital. It was the first really serious illness in the family, and I was just stressed and juggling. And I think it was a real eye opener for me to realize that there was this, a genuine connection between mind and body, and that that was when I really first learned about the physiology of stress, the neurophysiology of
Right.
stress. And I thought I was going to be off sick for 2 weeks, recovering from some mysterious virus, and it turned out to be 6 months. And then I had to come back part-time gradually over the course of 8 months until I was, fully strong again.
Wait, so you're at McKinsey when this happened?
I was at McKinsey, yeah, and it was a huge eye-opener, you can imagine. And basically my assumption had been that I was like a tank. I always had high aspirations for what I might be able to do or what I was seeking to do in my work, and I just assumed that my body was like a container that would be fine. I could abuse it and it would be okay, more or less. And so that was a huge shift for me, was to realize actually that I needed to look after my whole self if I was to be useful to anyone else. And so my shift then in doing the behavioral change work that I was doing, it went from working with huge companies on enormous change programs to becoming a lot more personal. I worked a lot with senior teams and with individuals, and I also really started to think very hard about how to change my own life. And it was really just understanding the importance of balance, not just talking about it, but actually thinking, how do I construct a daily routine which actually has balance in it? And it's interesting what you say about the social connections, because that was definitely one part of it, was to say, to treat, if I was seeing a friend, to treat that as being as important as any other meeting, and never to cancel it, or not to cancel it any more than I would cancel a meeting with a client. And that was really important and positive. But the other thing was just really prioritizing sleep, and recognizing that it wasn't a nice to have, that actually it was going to change everything if I was able to get enough sleep. And then working that back, having to construct an approach to work which was quite ruthless in prioritizing, really, really focused on what actually matters most right now. What am I uniquely placed to do right now? Yeah. So it was a whole system of change that unfolded from that point. It's funny how so often change happens with this kind of crisis, like with your back.
Yeah.
I suppose what we try and do is help people make change without crises happening to them.
That's right.
It's nice if you don't have to have a health crash to realize that you might want to change the way you live your life.
I feel like as a parent, that's my job. It's like I want my son to learn some of these things without having to go through the crash. Right? Like,
how are you tackling that? What are you teaching him?
Well, first of all, let me just respond. I love this idea of what you just said about the, making your commitments to your friends as important as not, because I would never miss a meeting, that I set up for work, right? Yeah. But then, I'm sorry I'm late. I had a meeting at work, right? Like, why would I prioritize that work relationship, which is less predictive of my happiness and well-being than, connecting? I love that. That's really helpful for me to hear as well. And on that point, I want to come back to your question, because I think it's really, I've learned so much having Leo, but I can see why they like these Leo conversations, because I was just reading this morning about how they did a study in the 90s where they asked NFL players if they would take a performance enhancing drug that would make them the best of their sport, but they would die 5 years later. Oh. And 52% of them said that they would do it. And what it started to create this whole conversation, the whole research paper was on how we glorify people that are able, like, you give up sleep. That's amazing. Like, well, you only slept 4 hours a night. You must be super productive, right? Or like you're working 100 hours a week. You must be like one of those super people. We turn the superpower into something that actually doesn't correlate with long-term levels of success or happiness or well-being at all. And I think we really need to figure out a way to do that. Like, sleep is such a perfect example. I don't know if you read Nurture Shock, but as a parent, one of the books I read preparing for Leo was this book about how important it was research studies that flipped what you thought about parenting. And one of them was, that TV is causing our kids to be obese. And I was like, of course, that's it. They're sedentary. And they said, actually, that sedentary activity trades off with other sedentary activities. The big change was over the past 20 years, our kids have gotten, on average, an hour less of sleep a night. Oh. And what's happening is it's impacting our mood, our weight, our success rates. Right. So at some of the schools, they actually started the school an hour later, and their test scores improved. The entire accidents for the entire community dropped by 50%, not just for the teenagers, because the teenagers were tired, and just incredible. So I'm wondering how this is something I want for Leo, and I feel like you've been in the McKinsey environment. I think so many people that watch these conversations, they want to be super successful.
Yeah.
They're surrounded by hyper competitive people.
Yeah.
How do you change? How do you change it?
Well, I kept on thinking, at least for a few years, that somehow I would be found out, that I didn't have the stamina that all my colleagues had, and that the fact that I needed 8 hours sleep, and really honestly 8.5 hours sleep to really be at my best, and that I was really not much use after working 11 hours in a day when a lot of my colleagues were working 14, 16 hours a day. Right. I felt like, well, obviously I'm going to be found out at some point as not being really part of this tribe.
You're weak, yeah.
But actually what happened was my mindset shifted, where I started to notice that I was getting as much done and I was doing fine. And in fact, I was deeply motivated and excited by the work that I was doing. And over time, I started to be quite bold in talking about the choices that I was making, quite bold about the boundaries that I was setting, very clear about when I was around, when I was not around, how much I was sleeping and how important that was. And I think that started to be, if I dare say, sort of perhaps a small force for good around me in telling people that actually it was possible to succeed in that environment while still trying to keep a sense of balance. And I think that being public and being open about the boundaries that I was setting, the choices I was making, certainly helped. And when I'm speaking at conferences, what often happens in the questions afterwards is, you might have the same thing, is people say, yes, but if I'm trying to do more single tasking rather than multitasking, given all the research about how much that helps you get through your work more quickly with fewer mistakes and with less frazzle, if I'm trying to do that, then I have to go offline. And I can't tell anyone that I'm going offline. I mean, right. I've got to be online the whole time because they might need me.
Yeah.
So I'm quite... often what I'm saying is really just to experiment and to not be shy about saying, this is what I'm doing in order that I can give more when I'm actually present. I don't know, what about you? You're very clear about the way that you live your life. Have you ever had to convince anyone else that what you're doing is the right thing?
I think so. I think that's why we have to have all this research, right? I think a lot of the things we're talking about are so common sense, but not common within the workplace at all or in our schools. So I've been experimenting with this on my own. In fact, even this fall, I've been working on this, where I realized that I'm a people pleaser. So if I get an email, I feel like I have to respond to it. And now we've got this way where like people can get in touch with you all the time. Like not everyone has my phone number. If somebody knocked on my door, I'd be like, why are you knocking on my door? But email, I feel like I have to respond to everything, right? Yeah. And so I've been starting to put up away messages, like almost in succession. Like I'm doing a writing retreat. I'm traveling right now. I'm spending time with my son. Yes. And what it did, I've gotten so many thank you emails from people that said, thank you for saying this because I felt like I had to be on when I was on vacation. Or thank you for doing this. It gives me license to try this out myself. And I think what you were doing in your book, I think what you're just describing there is that I think that I think happiness is one portion of this, but something I'm really fascinated with right now is that happiness is a personal choice, but it's not an individual choice. It's an interconnected one. Yeah. So that every time we choose it, we actually make it easier for other people around us to be more positive as well. So you're sleeping more might actually, because you're positive, change those interactions, which because of this whole web makes it easier for other people to interact. But you verbalizing that you're sleeping more or giving license to, even saying things you're positive about at work, or saying something good that happened to you. I think we feel like we can say the negative stuff, like, oh, I'm stressed, but we don't want to, or I'm like working a whole bunch, but we won't want to say, oh, I'm really excited about something good. When you do that, other people start telling you the good things. So I think it's about giving license to that. So these away messages have given me so much freedom. I haven't responded to everything. People have been grateful for, they now know what I'm doing within my life. So I love it. Have you tried stuff like that?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But these away messages, that's been quite transformational for me. In fact, when I came back and I was in that part-time working phase when I was trying to build up my physical and mental stamina again after being sick, I was working 2 or 3 days a week, and I was getting annoyed that people would be contacting me on the days that I was not working.
Right.
And I had a very wise colleague who said, yeah, but Caroline, you're the one living your own life. they are not actually trying to be jerks. They just don't know, what your routine is and when they can reach you and when they can't. How about you just be a bit more explicit about your choices? Yeah. And the very first thing I did was actually to put a signature at the bottom of my email saying when I was around. And actually, that was the beginning of doing a lot of what you're just describing, which is being really, really, free and fluid and jiggy with the out of office. Even when I'm not out of office, I'm sitting in the office. I'm just not. I'm not online actively available. So very, 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 very frequently put those messages on. And I use my positive no technique as well when I'm writing the little I'm not here. I say what I'm doing that is wonderful and exciting before saying, and therefore,
yes,
I'm not around just right now. So that also helps me because it makes me feel like I'm not just saying go away.
Yeah. Well, I love having a child because I can always use him as an excuse. So I'm like,
that's great.
I'd love to help you, but I want to be a really good dad. And it's true, I do want to be a good dad. But I think people give credence to that, and they actually respect you for those decisions. Yeah. On this point, like I talked to this guy who moved from New York to he was working in Germany, and he was working with a team, and he started in with that whole thing. Like, I was up till 11 o'clock doing this work and in the office at 4 a.m. And some of his German colleagues said, if you're working after 5 o'clock, you were not as efficient as you should have been, which is such a great flip, right? Great. Like we perceive working longer as productive, and that office saw it as inefficient, that you actually had to work when you should be having personal time or recharging. And if you want to be a good contributor to the team, you have to work on these things. But I find that the hardest thing for me, and I would love to hear your thoughts, because I know so many people that deal with this, is that as you become more successful as you are, and as you interact with more people, I feel like that there's an increase in the amount of demands upon your time. Yeah. Like I talked to this professor at Harvard who I was like, I can't wait to get a PhD because then I can finally relax. I'm pushing so hard. And he was like, undergrads think that, but then you get your PhD and then you have to get a postdoc, and you get a postdoc, and then work increases because you got to get tenure, and then you get tenure, and now you have all these committees and letters of recommendation. So he said, I've never worked as hard in my life as I do now that I'm tenured. So I think that when you become more prominent within a system, within a web, that there's more demands on your time. And I feel sometimes like I don't want people to think, oh, I'm too good to be able to address this situation. Like, how do you deal with the fact that you have more demands on your time than you're able to deal with?
It is the central question, actually. And I think it's the thing that I wrestle with most. I know how important it is to take downtime and to step away and to take proper breaks. But, that is probably the thing that I find hardest, given, as you say, that, with success comes a sense of wanting to be out there in the world and people wanting you to be out there in the world. I think that I really try and focus on what's the next big thing that I'm trying to build or work on. So I'm trying to be as clear as I can be about what really matters most if I think of myself, say, in 3 months' time, and I look back, what will I want to have built or created in that 3 months? And that helps me. I mean, certainly when I was writing the book, I had a Post-it note on my screen, the bottom of my screen, and I wrote a note saying, this is for, and then the names of 3 of my coaching clients, to keep me focused on what I was trying to do, which was really, do something which was going to help individuals across the world. And that really helped me stay focused. And it helped me in writing those, I am writing a book and therefore I can't. And those crushing no's that you say to things that in ordinary circumstances you would love to say yes to. Yeah. So for me, that helps. Is what is this phase about? What is this little chunk of time? Because I think if you can think of not trying to do everything all at once, but think, well, which of the many things I might be doing is this particular little chunk of time about? It becomes a little bit easier to say no to the other things because you're not saying no forever. You're just saying right now that is not what this is about. I think. What about you? What's your technique?
So I read this book called Essentialism by this. Greg. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. McCowan. The book's fantastic, Essentialism, and basically he said the thought before getting into essentialism, which is where you cut out the stuff that's non-essential, that it'd be just like, hey, these are the things I care about, and it's an easy no to everything else. And he said, that's not what essentialism is. He said, essentialism is saying no to things you really, really care about,
right,
because you care about something even more. And I love that, because it's the hard no's, right? Like, I'm sometimes saying no to a nonprofit that I really want to speak to, or no to a company that I know that this could, blossom into something else, but I already have too many talks and I'm away from my son and my wife. Or, I don't get to see my friends for tennis or play basketball, and I'm gone every week, it's those types of things. And I think the thing that I finally concluded this year that's been so helpful, and I think I'm going to keep it going, is I realized that because there's an infinite amount of demands on finite time, that regardless of what I do, I can't be everything. So there will be sacrifices. I'm going to have to sacrifice in every moment. Like, I'm sacrificing right now practicing the piano, and that means I'll probably never become a classical pianist, right? Not probably just because of this conversation. There's probably some other reasons, but along the way, I've made that
terribly
decision.
Guilty. You should just go play.
Can you imagine how good I would have been at piano? Yeah, it is these. So every moment is a sacrifice, right? Like, I'm not down with my son right now, and spending time with him. I think that the key is you have to be what I concluded was I just have to be okay with the sacrifices I make.
Right.
Be cool with the sacrifices, because for me that was everything. Yeah. Because I know instead of trying to stop sacrifice, I will sacrifice. I'm just gonna be okay with them, because I realized that the pain I was feeling was the pain of a divorce between I'm doing this but wish I was doing this, or that this sacrifice is not worth it. So if I'm traveling too much, it's not worth being away, then I need to make a change. But if I'm okay with that sacrifice, I'm okay sometimes being away or traveling or writing instead of talking to people, right? As long as I'm okay with it, because everyone has to be, those choices are personal, right? So like, if I'm okay with it, great. And as soon as I'm not, then I need to make a behavioral change like you described.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that concept of you've got finite time and effort and energy, and yes, there will always be infinite demands on you. And I remember the moment that I discovered that it didn't matter how efficient I was going to be, that I was not going to ever finish my to-do list. And just how it very quickly flipped from being, that's terrible, this is a disaster, life is really hard, to, okay, well, in some ways that's quite liberating, because it's never all going to get done. So I just need to be clear about the rules that I'm using to make the best choices I can possibly make from day to day. It's still, as you say, difficult when you say no to things that you really care about. But going back to this idea of being part of a web, I have found that quite often it's possible to think, who would this be a good opportunity for? What might be another way of being useful that would involve not me being in the loop, but me creating an opportunity for another connection to happen. So that also helps me, if I'm honest. That makes me feel like I'm doing something to be useful, but not necessarily giving my own time or effort.
I like that. Yeah. It's like Adam Grant's, the 5-minute favor. You can just pass off some of these things and do a lot of good, and they feel grateful you've even responded in the first place. So I love that concept. I think that's really helpful.
And of all the advice that you know is research-based and is a fantastic idea to have in your life, can I ask you what you find hardest to actually build into your routine?
Mm-hmm. It's a really good one. That's a really good question, because I feel like I've been working really hard to really implement the things I believe. Like, I've got the social connection, I practice gratitude, when I've set new goals, I write down things I've already accomplished. Like, those things I've been really good at. I think that the thing I struggle with is what this whole conversation's wrapped around, which is I know that I have to be okay with those sacrifices, but I'm a people pleaser. And I want everyone to feel valued within the system. So it's really hard for me sometimes to say that no when push comes to shove. I think that's been really hard for me. To be able to do in my life. The other thing is slowing down. I feel like I've been sprinting for the past 10 years, because I'm like, wow, this is when it's all in flow. It's all happening right now. I just need to sprint for another couple months, and then, things will slow down. It's not like I'll be happy when. It's not. I feel happy in the midst of it, but I'm like, okay, one more sprint. Oh, now I've got a book coming out, and sprint, and that sprint has turned into a really fast marathon, and I think I'm terrified. I've talked to a couple other authors about this. I'm terrified to get off of that sprint for a little bit because I worry that I will disappear, that I will no longer be relevant, that people won't be asking for like your comments or your thoughts on a certain topic. Yeah. So what I've been bad about is stepping back away from things for a little bit, which would recharge me and give me creativity, just because it's fear-based. I fear that like if you are out of the game long enough, people don't involve you in incredible conversations, getting to talk to people like yourself. So what about you?
What would you say to challenge that? Because I'm sure, knowing you, that there is a kind of very sophisticated conversation you're having with yourself about that.
Yeah, well, we know that the recovery period is one of the most crucial ones. And every person I respect, I mean, I was in the divinity school before doing this. I mean, my idol is C.S. Lewis. So because I love that he could take these complex theological conversations and talk to these, dons at Oxford, and then he could turn it into fiction for kids and make things come alive. And I don't write any like fiction or like really fun, I wrote Ripples Effect, but like I have all these things I would like to do with my life that I'm afraid of changing it all. But the person I want to be more like does those things. So the reason I'm mentioning that is that I learned that Martin Luther, who started the Protestant Reformation, that he actually would take 3 hours every day to like pray and to meditate and to do these recharging things. And somebody asked him, they were like, "You're leading this Reformation. How do you have time to do this?" And he's like, "I'm leading this. I don't have time not to do this. Like, this is crucial to who I am. Like, how can I study happiness and not do the things that I know make me feel most me? Like, I'm most me when I'm at a coffee shop reading something amazing that's spiritual and like uplifting, and then I'm taking notes on it." So I feel like that if I want to be, the only reason people like when I speak or when I write, when they like it, is because I'm actually acting more like that person. So I need to be more of that person within my life. So
that roundedness is crucial for your ability to connect and inspire other people, and your ability to step away. Downtime is as important as uptime. It's all time spent being who we are and doing the best that we possibly can. I feel the same with singing. I committed to joining a choir back in September, and the number of hours that it takes each week is really phenomenal. It's an enormous amount of time, and some people have said, "Well, how do you fit it in?" And absolutely, the answer is, well, actually, this is helping me. This is giving my brain a kind of rest in a way. And we know that by stepping away from a topic, just as we do when we sleep or when we're in the shower, and we return to it with fresh eyes, we often bring new insight. And I find that by immersing myself in something so completely different, some really complicated music, I come back with something fresh and new intellectually, for sure.
I love that. What kind of choir is it?
It's a classical choir. It's about 150 people. We actually performed at Carnegie Hall on Saturday, so this is a big deal for me.
You're not just in choir. You're at Carnegie Hall. Like you're still a superstar at this too. That's amazing.
No, it was a big deal for me. I was super, super excited. So we were singing a lot of Bach, various different types of Bach, as well as a sort of comic intermezzo, which is a modern piece. So anyway, I mean, I do think that sense that everything you do that's away from the computer is actually in its own way investing in whatever you're able to do in front of the computer. I think it's all part of who you are and the balance that you bring. I mean, you bring such a humanity to everything that you do, and the time you spend with Leo, the time you spend playing the piano, that's all infusing your writing and your speaking with something that is quite special.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to hear you sing too. This is great. I didn't know about this.
Not right now. Yeah. The thing that's actually hardest for me is anything that involves a routine. I'm quite an organised person. I think people would say I'm quite an organised person, but I'm such a bad morning person that all of the advice that's out there on you should do these things before 8 a.m. is all but, irrelevant to me, because my brain doesn't really function before 8 a.m. So So I've always been quite skeptical of research and advice that is very definitive and very prescriptive about you must do this at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This is the best time for you to do this particular activity, because it feels as if I live in a different time zone.
Right.
Left to myself, I'd go to sleep at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So I've always been working with this and struggling with it to try and fit my life to the time zone that I actually live in.
Yeah. Well, that research is all based upon the average, right? So for the average person, it might be great to do it before 2, but for you, that's not the case. Like, it actually might be detrimental for you to do some of those things before your
I've
time.
got no doubt, absolutely. I mean, definitely the work that, when I need to do things that require thought and care and sensitivity and all sorts of other sophisticated kind of ways of thinking, I need to do that in the afternoon, not in the morning, which is absolutely the opposite of the advice that you tend to read. So I am very interested in any work that homes in on people's chronotypes, that actually divides the test group by chronotype. I mean, there was a study that was called something like people are more moral in the mornings, and there was a researcher like me who was practically a vampire who said that doesn't sound right.
Right.
So she then reran the experiment, splitting people into early and kind of average and then late types, and of course found the exact opposite, that for people like me who are late chronotypes, we make better choices later in the day, not in the morning.
That's fascinating. And that's why it's so important. I think we live in a society, I mean, even you and I are part of this discussion, but we live in an opinion age. Like, everyone has an opinion and a blog and, advice for us and stuff like that. And I think that too often our opinions get turned into shoulds, and those shoulds then become weights that make us feel like I'm not as good a person as I could be or should be. And then instead of empowering us, it actually causes us to be weaker. So I really do try to find those things that fit with my strengths or fit with that worldview that say, yes, that I feel after I read it, I feel empowered to act. It's not like I feel good and now I can be complacent. Like, I want to be empowered, but not weighted down and paralyzed by that. I'm not a morning person.
Right.
So
You've got to find the ways of living that go with the grain of who you are. And if you can, then wonderful. Actually, to that point, what are the things that you do every single day? They feel so natural and they fit so well with who you are and your strengths. What are the things that you do every single day that you think people will be interested to hear?
I don't know if people would be interested to hear, but I do.
You're so modest.
I've had to create routines within my life.
Yeah.
My wife jokes, the whole 80-20 rule, 80% of the work gets done in 20% of the time. But I kind of will just do things as much as I can, but then that's fine. I don't perfect or finish anything. And so in order to get to those good points, though, I have to have a little more routine. And so I routinize doing the gratitudes every day, because I think the thinking of things you're grateful for, for me, just reminds me of what's valuable that day. It's like what you described. It's like when I go into work, I want to know why this email is life-giving instead of soul-draining, right? And I think that being reminded that there are good things going on just put something that should be there already in your brain back into that. So that's why I love doing this work and speaking, is because I feel like I need to hear these things over and over again. It's not like you take a shower and you're clean forever. You have to do it every day, right?
Absolutely,
so I do the gratitudes every day, and then I've been, exercising every day. And for me, I not every day, but I'd say 5 to 7 times a week. And because of that, and I do stuff that's fun for me. I'll listen to an audiobook of fantasy novels while pretending I'm on an elliptical or something. I'm there to listen to my audiobook, but because I miss it when I don't do it, and I feel so good when I'm doing everything else. And it's it's the opposite of trauma. You have a trauma when something bad happens, like a loss. I feel like it keeps hitting me over and over again. It's the opposite of that. We don't even have a word for the opposite of trauma, which is a whole nother conversation we should have. But a single positive event that keeps impacting you over the course of the day. And for me, that's exercise. So if I was much better at it, I would do those positive emails every day. And my work's kind of that, but intentionally a non-work related positive email each day would be great.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, it's absolutely the ending the day by thinking about what went well. And Yeah, and sometimes it really is a bit pathetic what went well, if it's really not been a good day, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's still going to. I mean, so I'm very interested in bringing behavioral economics lens because my own background, my own home discipline is economics, and so the peak end effect, the fact that we don't remember when we're assessing the quality of an experience, we don't remember every single point. We tend to take the average of 2 points, the most intense moment, the peak, and the end.
Yeah.
And so, one of the reasons it's so helpful to end the day in doing some kind of review of what you're grateful for and what has gone well is that it drags up the average, however bad the day was, so that as you remember the day. I mean, the way that you remember the day is affected by the intense moment at the end. Okay, well then you're hacking your memory of the day, and the way you remember the day becomes the way you think of your life. So that really starts to change the way that you view everything.
I love that. Yeah, I think that there are multiple realities every night when you go to sleep, right? One of them is you didn't accomplish everything because you can't, right?
Yeah.
But instead of highlighting, you're actually picking a more adaptive reality, right? You're constructing it by highlighting that the few building blocks you're going to use are those positive ones.
Yes.
And I think you're absolutely right. Like, it not only drags that entire average up, but it gives you that point of meaning each day that our brains are pattern connectors, so we start to see this whole trajectory of meaning running through our life. It helps us wake up the next morning knowing what happened the night before. And in the nights I don't sleep, or the nights I stay up, like, why did I do that? Or I should have gotten more done today, or, so I think the more we do it, the better off we are.
Yeah. It's a delight talking to you as ever. And I hope that this is giving people a sense that, we take our own advice. We don't always find it easy. We work at it every day. But it really has made a difference for both of us, I think.
Yeah, thank you so much.